Hey everybody, it's Thursday. I went online a few seconds early. I hope you're all having a wonderful evening over there in the United Kingdom of Queensland, Kingsland. I don't know what I'm saying today. We have a very special guest. It is Thursday, August the 29th, 2024. Peter Reed from Assetz Exchange is going to be here in just a few minutes. Always good if you have questions, comments, put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. We'll do a quick Q&A if you have anything and things don't run over time too much. It is very warm here, very muggy. Holly is here, ready to learn all about Assetz Exchange, as she always is. Quick mention to our sponsor of the YouTube channel. That is not our sponsor. Hold on a second. Let's turn that on. Cufflink, of course, earn up to 10.25% gross per annum. Over 350 million now invested since 2016. Zero investor losses to date. Your capital is at risk. Always remember that. Don't invest unless you're prepared to lose money. Please check rates on Cufflink's website as they do change. You can sign up at the link below, of course. Hi to everybody. Welcome. We're going to bring Peter on in just a second. You know what? Let's just get into it. If you haven't heard of Assetz Exchange, they are a UK-based peer-to-peer property style company, and it's interesting what they do. I've always enjoyed having Peter on, so I'm going to give him a call, and we're going to get him on here. Hang on one second. Bear with me. The wonders of newfangled technology. Here we go. Hope this works. Peter.
Hello, Lawrence. How are you?
I am really well, thank you. Hey, guess what? You are live to the billions of people that are on YouTube right now watching.
Many thanks. Many thanks for having me on Financial Thing, and thank you everybody for your time to listen to me. I hope it's worth it for you.
So polite. I love it. Everybody is excited to learn about Assetz Exchange, what you have going on there. So thank you for joining. Let's just get right into it. Yeah, no point in standing on ceremony, right? We'll just get right into it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Assetz Exchange, for anybody who doesn't know, UK-based peer-to-peer company where you can invest in socially good-to-do properties that are housing people that need to be housed. Of course, big problem in the UK is not enough affordable housing. So doing good for communities locally and doing good, hopefully, for your wallet, too, as an investor. Let's talk about Assetz Exchanges. What is the current size of your home portfolio? Because you've been going for a while now, and I tend to have you on about once a year, and I've watched you kind of evolve. So tell me about the portfolio right now.
Yes, so we have been going for 5 years. I think our first property went live in March 2019. And the current portfolio size is 70 properties, and the aggregate value of the loans required to buy those properties, so that's the value of the properties plus all the costs, etc., that go with it, and the contingency funds, is £24 million, just over £24 million.
Wow, 70 properties. I mean, you've kind of grown a lot. Is that hard, by the way, managing that many? Because you're quite a small team. We were talking about that earlier compared to some of our peers or some of your peers in the financial business. You're a team of 3, which I think is actually a good thing because it keeps costs manageable. But I would imagine, is it hard managing 70 properties with
well, I think, I mean, just to finish the earlier point,
Yeah.
And we'll come on to it later on because I'm sure we'll talk about the interest rates, etc. But the rate at which we've added properties to the platform slowed markedly from September 2022, and it hasn't picked up much, but we are seeing green shoots, which is all very exciting. But the question you ask about is it difficult to manage is a fantastic question, so thank you very much for asking it, because that kind of explains our business model, and it's worth just explaining to people who are unfamiliar with us why we ended up with this model whereby we buy supported living. So when we started out, as I said, the first property launched in March 2019. It was a joint venture with a company called Assetz Property, and the idea when we launched was to dovetail on the back of their sourcing capability. And what we would do is we would buy properties similar to them that they were buying, which were properties in the north of England, gross yield of about 6-7%. Off the cost, it was all about 3%. That did not work, and we realised very quickly it didn't work, and the reason it didn't work is because the yields weren't high enough, and it was also didn't work because when you buy a buy-to-let, I don't know whether it's different in Florida, Lawrence, but in the UK they are tenanted under these leasehold agreements called assured short-term tenancies, ASTs. I live under an AST because we rent our property, and they are short. They're only 1 year in nature, and the obligation is on the landlord to do an awful lot of things, like almost everything. And it's not possible to scale a business, we found, when you're buying standard buy-to-let businesses and you have to take care of everything. So if we had 70 properties that were tenanted under ASTs, then we would not be 3 people, we would be close to 30 people, I would have thought. It's very difficult, and the costs of those are very high. So you need a managing agent the whole time, you need someone to go and source the tenants for you, you've got to deal with the tenants, you've got to deal with all the repairs, etc, etc. So through an iterative process we ended up focusing on supported living. And as you say, the UK, and I don't think it's just the UK, I think it's a global issue, or certainly a Western world issue, there isn't enough housing for people who can't hold down a job. And as a society, we have a duty to go and provide a home for everybody, and we call that supported living in the UK. And there are many great things about supported living. It is a head and heart investment, so you know that your money is actually doing a good thing, but also they are tenanted through corporate leases, and corporate leases are longer than ASTs, and we refer to them as internal repair and insuring leases. So the tenant takes care of most day-to-day problems, so we don't have to get involved. And it's testimony to the quality of those leases that we only have 3 people and we've got 70 properties. So it is not a problem because of those leases, which is a very long-winded way of answering your question.
And it's
that's clear.
It sounds easy to scale too, because you've got because the way the leases are, it means you could scale quite big without having to worry about the day-to-day operations. So I think that's a very positive thing.
Yeah, we've invested a huge amount though. Most of our investment has gone into the administration site that runs all the properties, and so even if they are internal repair and insuring leases, they all have break clauses, they're all linked to inflation. They do, we are responsible for some of the we're responsible for the insurance, so all of that still needs to be managed, but we have got systems now which automate a lot of that.
That's good. Moving on, for anybody that's not familiar, what is the minimum investment amount to get into a investment on Assetz Exchange?
So we make it very easy for people to test the platform. We split the properties, or the loans that are used to buy the properties, into units of approximately £1. And what's slightly different to other peer-to-peer platforms is that property prices fluctuate, and that's reflected in the loans which are traded on the platform, and they go up and down accordingly with supply and demand. So when I say approximately £1, if a property goes up in price, it might be, the units might be £1.05, or if they fall in price, it might be 97 pence. But it's very easy for people to go and test the platform out by putting £100 on, for example, and then putting that across 10 different properties, and then leaving it for a month or so and going, okay, well, that I'm comfortable with that. Or if they don't like it, they can sell their investments and
they
take
can give it a
money off
try.
and move on.
That's
exactly.
good. Finally, a platform I could afford to try. Okay, so what are the average returns right now that investors are seeing across the platform?
So another very long-winded answer to a very simple question. We are different from platforms like LoanPad, where you get two types of return, and they do it all for you. So each of the loans that is used to buy a property is a standalone investment. So it's up to people to go and choose the properties that they want to invest in. And also those loans fluctuate in value. So if the properties go up or down, then that affects returns. So it's a difficult one to answer from our point of view. However, generally speaking, the properties that we have launched in 2024 have all had net yields of over 7%. The highest one was 8%, and the average is about 7.3%.
Okay.
So those are the monthly income net yields that you will get if you're invested. All those properties have also gone to a premium. So if you invested when the property's launched, you get a small capital gain as well, because they typically go up by 3 or 4%. So that's what we've been able to deliver in 2024. In 2023, we were getting there. We had to start from, I would say, it was slightly lower. And in 2022, which was our busiest year, we were doing net yields of around 5.5%. But those properties have all benefited from 2 increases in inflation. So the yields of those properties are now all over 6%.
Okay, because your yields are connected to inflation. Is that correct or not? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. So the leases are linked to usually CPI. We've got one RPI one, and so if CPI goes up by 10% as it did, then our leases went up by 10% directly.
That's a nice advantage. Tell me about the deal flow. You said 2024 has been a kind of a, would you say, challenging year for new deals, or how has the deal flow been for Assetz Exchange, and what are you doing to attack that challenge?
It's been tough ever since the Bank of England started increasing rates. And I don't know whether that's the case for any of the other peer-to-peer platforms that you interview, but it's certainly been the case for us. It meant that cash ISAs, which was a big inflow of, so people were transferring money out of their cash ISAs before summer 2022 onto us because they were getting a better return. That process reversed. And so 15 rate rises by the UK, by the Bank of England, meant that cash ISAs were delivering like 5% at one point. I think it's come down slightly. And people obviously took advantage of that. And we have to deliver a premium over and above cash ISAs to be able to get properties away. And as a result, we've had to have very difficult conversations with the tenants, the people we buy, our partners, our charity partners, and tell them that they have to pay more rent. And they are funded by the local authority, which is in turn funded by the Department of Work and Pensions and the Home Office, and they're all having their budgets cut. So it's been very difficult. So I would say it used to take 3 to 4 months to get a property ready to launch on our platform. It's now taking on average 6. So it takes a lot longer to go and get something ready. But things are improving. We at the moment are in the process of launching a property with a new partner called Let's for Life, and we are benefiting from a rejigging of their portfolio. So people wanting to sell their properties, and we want to buy them. And what's great about them is that we're getting decent yields. They're in Sheffield, which is a great city, and they pay that's 15-year full repair and insuring lease. So that is fantastic. We would call that institutional grade quality.
That is very good quality. Just going back to these leases, is it standard for situations where you have a business arrangement with a local charity or whatnot who's renting the house, or that's connected to the local government? I don't know. They're funded by the government, right, locally, or the council. Is a full repair and insuring lease kind of standard in that situation, or is that something you've been able to implement with your negotiations?
There's been a bit of a rush towards this because people have seen the benefits of investing in these properties vis-a-vis buy-to-lets, standard buy-to-lets under the AST. But the thing is that it's all about the quality of the counterparty. There's no point in signing a 25-year full repair and insuring lease paying really high yields if it just means that in 3 years the counterparty is going to go bankrupt, because you just end up with a problem on your hands. So if we generally deal with counterparties on the lease that are large and regulated by the regulator of social housing, and if they are regulated by the regulator of social housing, their leases have to be sustainable, and they get regulated to get these things called governance rating and a viability rating. And so what we do is we want to deal with charities who have good quality governance standards and will sign leases that are viable for the longer term. And therefore, our biggest partner is this company called Golden Lane Housing, which is an offshoot of the Royal Mencap Society. Some of your listeners may be familiar. And they insist on leases that are between 5 and 7 years and have breaks in them. And they are not full repair and insuring. We refer to them as internal repair and insuring. So if the roof falls in, that's our problem. Whereas if they want to change the colour of the kitchen or spruce it up, that's what we want them. That's what they have to do under the terms of the lease. We sign the same leases with Golden Lane as any of their other landlord suppliers. However, they don't like dealing with people. They don't like dealing with individual buy-to-let landlords because it's easier for them to deal with us, who have 70 properties and the processes in place to go and manage those, rather than someone who approaches them going, I've got a property, do you want to let it? And so it's a mixture of the two. Mm-hmm. Another very long-winded answer to a straightforward question by you, Lawrence. I do apologise. So yes, it's the same as the other suppliers to Golden Lane Housing. However, Golden Lane Housing are very choosy about who they rent properties from, and we've made it onto the good list.
Don't worry, you can answer as long as you want with your answers. That's what we're there to dive into. There's been a couple of questions in the chat about the Assetz name, the ASSETZ name, and how obviously Assetz Capital having its own changes over there, and your guys' name being sort of attached to that. Can you talk anything about, the connection now that is with Assetz Capital and how that's going to look going forward?
Yes. I can again give you another very long answer. Lucky old you, hey Lawrence. As all your listeners will be aware, Assetz Capital is exiting the peer-to-peer market. And we announced in our main newsletter that Stuart Law will no longer be a director or chairman of Assetz Exchange, and we also announced that he will be selling his holding in Assetz Exchange as part of a share purchase agreement that he was negotiating and executing and is hopefully concluding with some other shareholders. And part of the share purchase agreement means that we will no longer be called Assetz soon. I think we've got 3 months or so to change our name once a share purchase agreement is executed. To be honest, obviously being, that's an overused expression, being candid with you, being affiliated with Assetz Capital has been a massive boost for this business. We have met most of our underwriters and a large chunk of all our investors through Assetz Capital, and we are incredibly grateful to their generosity for all of those introductions, etc. However, since Assetz Capital has decided to exit the peer-to-peer market, and the manner in which they've done it, we have had complaints. And we get complaints quite often. People quite often just like to rant about Assetz Capital. I have a lot of phone calls about those. And then they also sometimes believe that we are Assetz Capital. But also, I think, just simple things. They don't answer the phone anymore, and they do have a chat system on their site, but it's not a particularly well manned chat system from what I understand from the phone calls I have. And so people just phone up and complain about that quite a lot. So I think, it's been a wonderful relationship. It's run its course, and we will be called something else soon, which I'm not in a position to tell you right now, but I shortly will, hopefully.
Okay. I mean, because if you'd like to use the thing name, you could be Exchange Thing. I'll be okay, But anyway, probably not good.
Thing.
Yeah.
Exchange. Good.
Well,
Yeah,
I had the same thing because but my name was very close to another peer-to-peer lending platform with part of that name that also went very sour. So, but I said, you know what? It's just a name. I could see it affecting you far more than it would affect me.
Well, I mean, the one area of our business that we need to improve things has been marketing, and that's just slowly, and we've grown very steadily, and most of our referrals come from word of mouth, much to my niece's amusement. If you spell assets correctly, then we've got sex change in our name, which they find hysterically funny. And so, I mean, that aside, it's a long name. Assets isn't spelt correctly, it's spelled with a Z, and so all these things, and it doesn't really give people a sense about what we do, or even an emotional sense about what we do. So we're looking for a new name that will be easy to spell, convey what we do, or give a hint of what we do, and have a bit more emotion attached to it.
Okay. I always wondered this is a question that came up on my own devices. You have these full repair and insuring leases on these properties, but let's say a tenant leaves and the home is vacant, and how are the costs covered if there's like some kind of a damage or repair that needs doing? Who covers that?
Okay, so the leases are signed for a period of time, going back to that Golden Lane example I gave you, so let's say 5 years, and then they will have a 2-year break. So let's say for whatever reason the property becomes vacant after year 1 of signing the lease. Well, Golden Lane Housing are still required to pay the rent for the year that is vacant, and then on that second year, when the break clause becomes available, they would break the clause. And then at that point, they would hand back the property. Now, in terms of the quality of the property, and if something happens, it's in the lease that Golden Lane Housing will have to hand it back in the condition that we gave it to them. So at that point, we would ask the investors in the loan of that property that was used to buy that property, what do you want to do? And we could go and we'd give them choices. We'd say, do you want to let it out as a normal AST? Do you want to sell it? Or, we can go and try and find another charity partner to go and tenant it. Of those three, historically, investors have chosen to try and get it tenanted by another charity partner because they deliver the best returns. If they can't do that, then they'll vote to sell it. And so far, we've only had one where they've asked to go and continue letting it as a buy-to-let.
Okay. So what if, okay, hypothetical scenario, what if the tenant leaves, they're out of their lease, they're in their break period, so they've declined to continue, they're off the hook. The roof caves in, the home's vacant, and now you got to repair the roof, right? So say you had to put a new roof on the building or repair it. Where does that money come from?
So if the roof caved in, then it comes from building insurance.
Okay.
So that would be covered because they're all insured for things like that.
It's a terrible example on my part. What if it was something that wasn't covered under insurance? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, so if it was covered under insurance, if it wasn't covered under insurance, then on the Articles of Association of the limited company that are used to go and buy the property would enable us to go and get a senior debt to be able to go and repair the property. But okay, it would still be up to the lenders with the loan via Assetz Exchange to be able to go and decide what they wanted to do. But okay, in that particular case, you do have to sort of like, we have to use our initiative and we have to go and give investors the best outcomes that we think are available to them. But it's very much a two-way conversation, and we have some very passionate investors on our platform that have a lot of experience in property.
Okay. I think you answered my next question already. What circumstances lead Assetz Exchange to place a home up for sale? So that comes under a vote, and yes, the shareholders or loan holders decide whether to keep the home or place it or to sell it. So it seems like they would probably just end up keeping it for the most part if it's performed well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the idea, I mean, the other thing as well why Assetz Exchange is good is that the loan that is used to go and buy the property initially will include all the stamp duty, they'll charge the legal fees, they'll have the contingency fund, they'll have all that kind of stuff. So when you buy and sell on Assetz Exchange, you pass all those costs on to someone who wants to buy it. So if I've bought into it and a year later I sell my stake, I'm selling on all of that investment to someone. So you don't really want, if you can possibly avoid it, to buy or sell property because it's very expensive to do so. So the idea is if you want to go and leave the property, there's an exchange, you can put your units up for sale, and liquidity has been improving, so someone would buy from you. So those people coming in, they don't really want the property to be sold, they just want the income from it. And that's what's amazing about these supported living properties is that people with, say, Down syndrome or autism, they have a life expectancy that's the same as anybody else in society. And as a result, if someone moves into their own accommodation, say in their 30s, then the likelihood is they'll be in that property for 40 years. So you can get a very, very long-term income from properties on Assetz Exchange.
Okay. I like to delve into some of the problems and challenges that you guys have running these companies, and I appreciate you being transparent because not everybody wants to talk about the bad stuff. They want to talk about the rosy stuff. But I was delving through a couple of your loans or your properties that you have, and there was this one that I came up called Design House in Leeds. Said there was some potential legal issues that were happening with that house. Could you sort of give me a brief summary of what has happened? And because I think people need to know about these things, these types of things that can happen.
Absolutely. So that was the first property that we launched in March 2019, and it was sourced through Assetz Property, as I've alluded to, and it was a converted river mill into student accommodation in Leeds for students. And we bought it, and at the time the developer who was selling it offered as part of their sales package a put option. So they agreed in 5 years' time to buy the property back at 20% above the price that we purchased it at. So we purchased it, I think, at £100,000 from memory, and that put option obligated them to go and buy it back from us if we exercise the option at 120,000. Now it transpires that we probably paid too much from it, even though prices and leads have gone up quite a lot since then. And so we put it to the investors in the property. We said, what do you want to do? Do you want to exercise this put option? Which they voted to say yes, they did. So we sent the option agreement signed back to this developer called Priestley's, and we said we want to exercise the option. Now, Priestley's, we're hoping that everybody had forgotten about that put option, it transpires. And they haven't rejected it, but they've dragged their feet. And they have informed us that they are trying to get financing in place to go and buy the property back. I think that they are hoping that we will just forget about it and try and put the property on the market anyway. And we most certainly haven't. We have been with our investors, polling them, and we have sent a letter threatening to take them to court, instigating litigation against them. So we've been advised by our lawyers, which we pass on all this advice to our lenders, saying, if you do go to court, there's it's not a risk-free solution, litigation, but it's pretty clear that they are obligated under this agreement to go and buy this property back from you at £120,000.
They've made a violation of their legal obligation. That was a good.
Yes.
That was a good rhyme. Yeah, that was. Thanks.
A lot of these loans are all in place to go. Peer-to-peer loans are either for small house builders or bridging loans or this that, and the other. And every now and then, things crop up in the property world, and you have to go and get their money back.
You got to enforce sometimes. That's what legals are for.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for explaining that. I appreciate that. Bank of England interest rates, of course, it affects every single investor, peer-to-peer lending company out there. Interest rate fluctuations. How do these rate cuts affect you, Peter, and Assetz Exchange and the lenders?
Well, beneficially is the short answer at last, Lawrence, for your. It's been a big old slog. The rate at which we've added new properties on the platform has been tough. The ability to go and increase the yields, which we've had to do, has been a struggle. All those things, as in Bank of England's increased rates. Where we are hopeful, and the reason we are optimistic about the future, is that as the Bank of England reduces rates, and obviously the rate reduction is much slower than everybody had hoped, but I think it's still the general consensus that rates will continue to fall, albeit over a much more elongated period. Our yields won't. We are not seeing tremendous pressure in the housing market, so we can still buy properties at a sensible price. We're not being outbid on properties or anything like that. And due to the shortage of housing over X many years in this country, X many decades, rental rates are very high. They are not coming down. And one of the factors that influences the yield that we can get from our charity partners is the market rental rates. And so we are confident at this point in time that we will be able to source new properties for our investors at over 7% for the foreseeable future, irrespective of rates coming down by the Bank of England. So our hope is that the rates continue to fall by the Bank of England, Cash ISA saving rates and other peer-to-peer platforms rates will follow in due course, but our rates will remain high, and we will go back to a position of being competitive again. Okay. We are competitive now, but there's not like the 3-4% spread at the moment that there was in the beginning of 2022 that we could achieve. But we are hopeful that we will become one of the most competitive, offer one of the most competitive rates in the market as time goes on. So, current rate of the UK housing market is lack of affordable housing continues to be something that's a narrative that I've heard ever since I was a kid. Doesn't seem like that's really going to change. But however,
how is the current rate of the UK market, or the current, I should say state, not rate, of the UK market affecting you? Does it affect Assetz Exchange and what you guys are doing?
Well, the ideal scenario is that house prices, it becomes, well, I think going into 2020, at the end of 2022, going into 2023, there was a lot of talk about house prices weakening significantly. That hasn't happened. I don't think people have been forced to sell like people were quite expecting to. And in terms of sourcing new properties, that means that we haven't been able to pick up bargains that would have helped us to be able to keep rates very high. But the flip side of that is that it's meant that our existing housing portfolio hasn't declined in value very much at all. So you always have to think about the loans that we've got people into, because they're around for a very long period of time. And I think the housing market buoyancy or robustness has helped those, but it does mean that the current state of the market means that it's difficult. It's been difficult to pick up houses at cheap prices. I'd say it's been quite robust, but there's not the same bidding frenzy that we were experiencing just after COVID, which has made life difficult in terms of sourcing properties for ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's nuanced. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Our expectation is the housing market remains slow and flat for the foreseeable future, and that's no bad thing for us, certainly if rates come down.
So I always find this question super interesting, because you have to balance having enough money from investors to fund houses, right? And it's something that every company has to deal with, that balance. Like, there's always too much money or not enough money, too many deals. How has the balance been for you with the demand and supply? Have you had trouble finding properties versus having too much investor money, or has it been the other way around, or have you gotten that nirvana perfect balance yet?
No, never had the nirvana.
No.
No, in May, June 2022, it was not enough property, too much investor money, and we had to introduce caps on the property, because as an FCA regulated business, we have to treat clients fairly, and we noted that people were just buying on yield. They weren't really buying with any consideration to the value of the underlying property, so in our view they were overpaying for the properties, so we had to introduce caps to stop them do that. And it switched. So as soon as the Bank of England started increasing rates, then people were very frightened, so they just weren't really investing. And then as they carried on putting rates up, cash ISAs started becoming much more attractive, as I've said, so they're putting their money with cash ISAs. And so as a result, since September 2022 up until now, it's been not enough investors and too much property. But
yes,
things are beginning to change. So the property that we're hoping to launch tomorrow, the gauge is the underwriters. So to be clear, we pay underwriters for the provision for providing funds at short notice. So we will get a property into place to go and buy it, and it will take us months, but then 2 weeks before the property is meant to go, we're meant to buy it, our solicitor will go, yep, everything's all in place, and then we go out to a bank of wealthy individuals. Anybody can be an underwriter, you just got to have £50,000 on the platform, and you'll get an email saying, we're going to buy this property, we need underwriters to provide funds at short notice, can you do that? And go and put your pledge in. Now the underwriters, their nirvana, their optimal situation is that we pay them and then they sell on the investments very quickly on the aftermarket on Assetz Exchange, because all the investors go and buy off them, and they are smart people, and you can always tell how much demand there is for property on how enthusiastic underwriters are for lending, providing their money, and how much money they charge for it. And at the moment, in the last one that we've done, which is total loan size about 400,000, it was snapped up in minutes, the whole thing. So people were very excited by it. So it was a bit of you can kind of tell that things are moving in the right direction for us again. So that gives us a bit more confidence to go and get more property on, etc.
Okay.
But being totally candid, this time last year, it was not easy trying to get underwriters to provide the funds.
So for everybody that's watching the stream or in the chat, go put some money into Assetz Exchange so you can fill this deal tomorrow, right? So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great property.
Well, somebody has commented in the chat. Mike Powell said, "Very fast deposits and withdrawals. Funds sent and credited during the last answer." So I'm presuming he did that during this interview. So there you go. You had a little bit of a good pat on the back there.
Well, yeah, I think my colleague Ben, who's in charge of the operations of the business and runs the administration side of it, he is fastidious. He's an accountant by training and nature, so things run well because of Ben.
Good job, Ben. Much respect. Okay, yeah, and if you guys have questions, please hit that thumbs up for Peter for him spending his time here on a evening. Sounds like the birds are chirping there. Where are you, by the way, right now?
I'm in Surrey, south of Guildford.
It sounds
wonderful. On a farm.
Okay, you can hear the sounds of the farm in the background, which is nice. But yeah, hit the thumbs up for Peter, and thank him for being here on his Thursday evening. He could be doing a lot of more important things, I'm sure, but he chooses to be here with you guys.
Absolutely not. Thank you. I'll give a thumbs up to everybody else for listening to me.
A couple more questions. Profitability of Assetz Exchange. How are you doing in regards as a business? Are you making money?
Yeah, so it's worth explaining to people who are not aware. We make our money through an loan arrangement fee, which is a glorified estate agent fee when we launch the property, which is a one-off fee, and then we retain a proportion of the rent. We are trying to get ourselves into a state whereby the portfolio is sufficiently large that the monitoring fee, the loan monitoring fee, which is very stable income that we get every month, covers the costs. And so if we have another COVID or another load of rate rises, it doesn't make any difference to the platform at all. We can just hang on in there, and we don't need to go and source any more loans or anything. We did very well in 2022. We made a profit of £109,000, which was great. And then in 2023, we made a loss of, I think it was about £90,000. And in 2024, we are breaking even. So as of, I think it was the end of June, we were in profit, but then in July we had a slight dip. So yeah, it's there or thereabouts.
Heading in the right direction, I'll say.
Yeah. It's definitely excited about the future. There's so much we can do. We've got some fantastic partners and fantastic investors. So I think in terms of profitability, our hope is that because we've got an October year end, so the year to October 2025 will be back on there. And then in May and June 2022, we actually made £70,000 profit each month. So if we can get in 2026 back to making 70 grand a month, then the business will be in a really good place.
Good. That's awesome. Let's see. There's a couple of people with the questions in the chat I'll ask, and then we can talk a little bit more. So we go for about close to 45 minutes, so I try not to let these things go on for too long for your sake, so you can go eat your dinner and do what you need to do. George Batchelor asks, fixed costs of 15 to 20% of property of the purchase price. If the property doesn't rise by this amount by the end of the lease, I understand there will be a similar capital loss. I know I can sell including fixed costs. Yes, maybe you understand that more than I do.
And no, George is absolutely right. Yep, that is one of the risks of investing with us. So let's say, for example, the lease is 5 years long, and we go and buy a property for £100,000. There's £15,000 worth of costs. At the end of the lease, for whatever reason, the property's sold and the property price hasn't gone up by 100,000. Then there is a potential capital loss of £15,000.
Okay. And what does he mean when he says, "I know I can sell including fixed costs"? Is he saying he can put his shares up for sale?
He can put his up for 115, which is what he would have done at the beginning. So you can sell that. So I was explaining about how you go and sell on.
Okay.
But it's also worth pointing out to George that the expectation of all of the tenants is that they will roll the lease. So the leases get rolled. Because if you have someone with severe autism in a building, they're very sensitive to their environment, and generally they try and buy homes for life, and so they do not want to disturb someone by moving them from one property onto another. So the expectation by everybody is that we'll get to the end of the lease and then we'll renew another lease.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Let's see, Robert Pates. This is a government question, so goodness, do we want to get into that? But let's ask you anyways. How do you see this Labour government affecting your business, good or bad?
Again, I'm not really a very political person, so I would say that although they have made lots of noises about being fiscally responsible, which is obviously a very good thing, I think because they are from a left point of view, I don't think they're going to be cutting housing benefit for vulnerable people. I think it's much less likely. I didn't think it would be likely under the Tory government. I think sadly when these government cuts come along, they mainly come along to the arts and sports, local services. Those are the first things to go. I think they won't be cutting. I think it's very unlikely they'll be cutting budgets for supported living.
Okay. And do you think generally then you kind of neutral to whether the government will be good or bad for your business?
No, I think the other thing to go and consider is housing supply. So if there's more housing, would that affect the house prices, etc.? I mean, I don't know anything about that. I haven't seen anything or read anything that would make me. I mean, I know that they want to increase the supply of housing, but I don't know how they're going to do it. If you spoke to Stuart Law, he's passionate about this, and he would say that you need to be able to increase funding for small house builders because there's an oligopoly going on at the moment amongst the larger house builders. But I don't think that per se is there's not going to be a massive effect on that one. So I think Labour government coming in is either a neutral or a benefit.
Okay.
That's how I would look at it.
All right, Mike Powell lastly asked, shareholder question, what's the long-term plan for returns to shareholders?
So it's a very good question. We're trying to get to a place where we can go and have a lot more properties on the platform, market to it, and then the loan monitoring fee is incredibly stable income, and that in itself is either very attractive to institutional investors once you get to a certain size. We're too small for them to be interested in at the moment, or it's a perfect dividend income.
Okay.
So it would be to deliver back to dividends.
Okay. All right, and let's see. I think we pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover. Do you have anything else you'd like to share, Peter? Take this opportunity to reach out to the billions of people here on YouTube.
No, I think if I was saying, obviously, I think some of your listeners know us, and so I'd like to say thank you very much for all your support. But for those of your listeners who are new to Assetz Exchange, or hopefully we piqued your interest, but yeah, just very easy to test the platform. It's very easy to go and put a small amount of money on, and and see whether you like it or not. And it is very much, we're fully transparent as a business, and we go and provide everything, including management accounts, all the lease details, etc. So it's very easy to go and have a look, see which properties you like, test it out, and hopefully you'll like it. But if you don't, just sell up your investment and move on.
There you go. And also, I have one other suggestion for you. You should let the investors pick out the name.
Yeah.
You know how they did with the boat that they named
Boating McBoatface. Yeah. Well, peer-to-peer Boating McBoatface.
they could name it Exchange Exchange or something.
Exchange Exchange. Yeah.
You never know. Or you could get their input if nothing else. Maybe somebody would come up with this amazing name that you never even thought of.
Well, exactly. That would be a very good idea. Watch this space, Lawrence.
Okay, I'll be watching as I always do. Well, listen, if there's nothing else, thank you so much for always being here and being so transparent. That's one thing I really do appreciate about you, Peter. You've always been open to coming on here and spilling the beans, which not everybody loves to do. So, and you do it with a smile on your face, and you never look any older every year that we've been doing this. We've been doing this for a few years now. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, this is my third time on
yeah, so it'll be three or 4 years. So, and you always look the same. It's very good, but excellent. And I think people are pretty happy. So.
Yeah, and any feedback, please do send us feedback on the help desk at Assetz Exchange. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and Robert was asking what's a small amount of money. You don't need much to test out the platform.
A
pound. So you can check it out for £1. Very easy. Go to assetsexchange.co.uk and watch the space.
Spelled wrong with a Z.
Asset spelled with it's Zex change instead of sex change. So, but watch the space for the name change. Thank you again. We'll have you back on. Hopefully, we won't wait a year.
Yes, exactly.
Next time, because it's always good.
Thank you, Lawrence, and thanks everybody for listening to me.
You're welcome. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, Peter.
Cheers, then.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay. I'm gonna change my camera because I don't know. Ooh, look at that. I don't know what is going on with my regular webcam, but it seems to be doing some kind of a glitchy robot thing. But I hope you enjoyed the interview or question and answer session. We'll be back next Thursday, hitting September. Thank you for spending your evening with us, and we'll see you next time. That's all I got for you. Take care. Bye.